Welcome back to Invisible Jacksons. My name is Tori. If you are new here and don't recognize this channel, I use this as an outlet to show my appreciation and support for the Jackson family. Now, it's been a minute since I got back behind the camera, but I'm happy to be back because I have a special charting event announcement. As you know, since we started the Thriller Challenge in 2022, there's been kind of like a chain reaction of more Jackson charting event happening in order to get the Jacksons to the top of the chart. And this time, it is Janet Jackson's turn. So from February 9th to February 15th, we will be doing Damita Jo Chart Week. And this is to get her very underrated album, Damita Jo, to #1 on the charts. So if you're wondering why we're doing this or even how you can participate, stay tuned and keep watching. Now, there are a couple reasons as to why we have chosen to do Damita Jo Chart Week this year. And one of the main reasons is that this year will be the album's 20th anniversary. The album was originally released in 2004, and in March, it will turn 20. So that's a huge deal right there. Another reason as to why we are doing it this year is because I really wanted to kind of do something big this year for the week of Janet Jackson Appreciation Day. And if you don't know what Janet Jackson Appreciation Day is, it is a social media campaign that was started up by filmmaker Matthew A. Cherry in support of Janet Jackson as a way to honor her, uplift her, talk about and discuss how she's impacted us, the music industry, talk about her artistry, just a day to celebrate Janet. Now, every year it falls on Super Bowl Sunday. And if you know why that is. But if you don't know, basically 20 years ago, Janet Jackson was performing in the Super Bowl with Justin Timberlake. And unfortunately, there was a wardrobe malfunction in which Justin Timberlake was to pull a piece of her clothing off, but instead of it showing like a layer underneath, it ripped the whole thing off of her chest, and for a couple seconds on the screen it showed like her actual chest. Now this was an accident, complete accident. It wasn't intentional at all, but the reaction that it received was just insane. Although both Janet and Justin Timberlake had a part in this, Janet was the only one who really got the sole blame of it all. She got unfair treatment, and this began the process of them trying to blacklist her and censor her. And it started off by, of course, getting her to apologize. Even though it was an accident, she did apologize. She did take accountability. And then, as you know, every year in February, it is the Grammys. Now, that particular year at the Grammys, they invited Janet. But the only thing was, in order for her to be able to be there and perform, is that she did another apology. Now, she had already apologized twice publicly, and there was really no need for her to do it a third time, especially with this being an accident. I feel like they just blew it all the way out of proportion. So because she refused to apologize again, because that's just, at this point, people are just trying to embarrass her. She decided, like, no, I'm not gonna apologize. And they banned her from the Grammys. And that didn't stop there, unfortunately. At the time of her album being released, you know, there are singles that are releasing, there are music videos being made and releasing. So those are really key things that help the promotion of the album, that help the success of the album. So at first it was doing really well. Her first single, Just a Little While, was doing really well. But then, of course, the industry and their blacklisting, they went and essentially blocked the success of Damita Jo. And they did this by blocking her music from being played on mainstream radio stations, and they wouldn't play her music videos on major music TV networks like MTV. Ultimately, the album ended up debuting and peaking at #2 on the Billboard 200, and it sold 381,000 copies its first week. But unfortunately, it did stop her #1 album streak which lasted for 5 consecutive albums. After that first chart week, sales slowed down, they dropped, and so did her chart position. And I feel like if the album got the proper promotion and it wasn't sabotage, it would have done so well, because Damita Jo is such a solid, underrated album. So that is a huge reason as to why we are doing this Damita Jo Chart Week. It is to get justice for the album, to honor Janet, and it's kind of like a aha got you in the industry's face if we can get this to #1. Now, if you would like a more in-depth background as to what happened with the Damita Jo album and how the unfair treatment after the Super Bowl affected the album, there's a really great in-depth video about this from the YouTuber called Calvin Michaels, and this was a part of his So What Happened series, and I will be linking that down below. I feel like if you haven't seen the video, if you don't know the actual like full story, I feel like you should watch it. So once again, the goal of Damita Jo Chart Week is to get Janet Jackson's Damita Jo album to #1 on specifically the Billboard 200 chart and the Billboard World Album Chart. This means that fans all around the world and internationally can participate in this and have an impact in helping Janet Jackson's legacy. If we get this to happen, y'all, Janet Jackson will break her own record and end up having 5 consecutive decades where she has a #1 album. She's had at least one in the 80s, at least one in the 90s, the 2000s, 2010s, and now we can make it happen in the 2020s. There are a couple ways that we are going to achieve this, and the first one is by streaming. Streaming is going to be a really important way that we are able to get Damita Jo to the top of the chart. I've looked at like recent album like chart stats, and the albums that are topping the charts have gotten there mainly by streaming. So we're going to have to stream day, night, and overnight starting at 12:01 a.m. February 9th in your city's time zone. Since we are going to be nonstop streaming, it can be easy to fall into spam-like behavior, bot-like behavior on these streaming platforms. But don't worry, I have some tips that I wrote down in order to avoid this. First way we can avoid like bot-like behavior is by streaming through playlists. Now I will provide some playlists, but if you like to make your own, which I encourage, there's a formula to follow. So basically, you can make a playlist however long you want, and you can include Janet's music, and then also it has been recommended to include other artists' music. So that could be like other Jacksons or artists related to Janet. And then the formula that we have to follow when adding tracks from Damita Jo is by adding Damita Jo tracks every 2 to 3 songs. So let's say you want to start off the playlist by kicking it off with R&B Junkie. Following, you could put like Scream, and then If, and then another track from Damita Jo, and then 2 more other tracks, and then another track from Damita Jo. One last way to avoid bot-like behavior is by skipping or pausing or liking a song every now and then, just to let the streaming service know that there's still a human on the other side listening and interacting. A few last tips to keep in mind when streaming is first, and this is super important, never ever mute the music on your streaming services player. That can affect with how the streams are counted, if the streams are even counted. So if you're like trying to go to sleep, because I know I stream overnight, I don't want that music playing loud, or if you're at work and you can't like play the music out loud, I would recommend either like plugging like a headphone into your device or cutting down your device's like internal volume. So like on your phone, use those buttons on the side that control the volume to cut it down. On your computer, use the keyboard button to cut it down, but never ever cut that player volume down. I actually recently found out that streams count more on like paid or premium versions of like streaming services. So if you're using like the free Spotify version, like the one that doesn't let you skip a whole lot or only lets you listen to music on shuffle, I would recommend checking to see if you can do a free Spotify trial. Usually they do like a 1 month or 2 month free trial, and then they also sometimes offer like 90 something cents for 3 months of Spotify Premium. So check that out. There will be a really cool way that we can listen and stream Damita Jo together, and that will be through Stationhead streaming parties. So if you don't know what Stationhead is, it's basically a music streaming app that allows you to host streaming parties and join streaming parties with your friends or other fans. And what's really cool about this is that it will actually help boost streams for your favorite artists. So if there's like 50 people in the party at a time and Slow Love from Damita Jo is playing, that means 50 streams will be accumulated towards that song and album. Now, the way you will be able to hear the music and get those streams counted is by attaching a paid Apple Music or Spotify Premium account to your Stationhead. One thing to note is that if you are an Android user, Stationhead will not allow you to attach an Apple Music account. It will only allow you to attach a Spotify Premium account. But if you want to do an Apple Music account on your Stationhead, you can go on your computer, on the browser, and in the settings, it should let you attach it. If you don't have like Apple Music or Spotify Premium, once again, check for those free trials, and then you could always like cancel them before it'll start charging you. There will be a week-long schedule of Stationhead parties, and hopefully 24/7 Stationhead parties going throughout the day. If you want to like hop in and join those, stream with other people, and talk with other fans, these parties get really fun. It's fun. There's lots of commentary. Everybody is like really nice in there. So I would suggest and recommend joining those parties. So another way that we are going to get Damita Jo to chart is by purchasing the album digitally. Now you can do this on Amazon Music, iTunes, Qobuz, or 7 Digital. And I will, of course, like link the direct buying links down below in the description box. I would recommend you start buying maybe a couple days into the chart week, because with time zones, it can get kind of weird. So like if you were to start buying the album as soon as like, 12:01 a.m. Hit in your time zone, and you like live in the East Coast, it's still gonna be the day before in the West Coast. And like Amazon Music headquarters is in the West Coast, and I believe like when we tried to do that before, it was counting our sales for the prior day for that like previous chart week. So I would just wait a little bit. Another major thing to note is that recently Billboard has changed the rules when buying albums digitally, and this means that you can only buy one of the album per email address per chart week. So this means if you are using Amazon Music and the account that you use has the email 123@gmail.com registered, you cannot use that email for any more purchases, regardless of what music distributor website you're using. So if you want to buy from iTunes and buy multiple copies, you will have to use a completely different email address, as well as for the other ones as well. So if you don't want to do this, and you don't want to like make all these accounts, I honestly would ask, friends or family, other Janet fans in real life, or people who just respect you as a Janet Jackson fan, to buy the album as well. You can even like offer them the money, like send them the money to do it. I've had like coworkers do it for me. I asked them, they were kind of like, but once I offered them the money, they were like, okay. Huge thing to remember. Right after you purchase the album, you need to download it for the sales account. From what I've heard, if you don't download the album to like your device after you buy it, I don't think that it will count towards the sales numbers. Lastly, before I forget, the album that we are needing to buy and stream, I forgot to say this earlier, is the original version of the Damita Jo album with 22 tracks. So it's the one with like the parental advisory sticker in the bottom corner of the album. That is the one, like, that's the version that we need to buy. If we don't get that version, if we're just getting like the other one, like the clean version, it will count for a different version of it charting instead of just the original. One last method as to how we're going to get Damita Jo to chart is by radio play. So where we come in with radio play is by requesting tracks from the album to be played on the radio. So you could call a radio station, you could tweet a radio station, you can even go to the radio station's website or app and fill out a request form there. And then also I heard through like the iHeartRadio website or app, you can like request songs to be played through there on radio stations. I was thinking that we would like ask like urban radio station, R&B radio station, and throwback radio stations to play it, because I feel like they would be the ones that would be willing to do it. And those type of radio stations are actually the ones that continue to play Janet's music while, you know, they were trying to censor her and blacklist her and block the Damita Jo album from succeeding. Lastly, I ask all of y'all to help share and post about the Damita Jo Chart Week by using the hashtags Damita Jo Chart Week, Janet Jackson Appreciation Day, Justice for Damita Jo, and Stream Damita Jo. If you haven't seen yet, there is a Stream Damita Jo campaign that is going side by side with Damita Jo Chart Week, and it was organized by 3 wonderful Janet Jackson fans. The goal of Stream Damita Jo is to continue to keep the album charting up until like its 20th anniversary in March. And you can like find more information about this by following the 3 organizers. I'll put their Twitter username somewhere on the screen. And then also one of them is hosting a Damita Jo Twitter Spaces. They'll be discussing the album as well as sharing information about Stream Damita Jo and information about Damita Jo Chart Week. I will put the link to that Twitter Spaces down below so that you can set a reminder if you would like to join or share it and like retweet it. They are also asking us to use the hashtag Janet Jackson Appreciation Day up until the end of Janet Jackson Appreciation Day this year on February 11th. And then also Justice for Damita Jo hashtag and Stream Damita Jo hashtag up until the 20th anniversary. I really, really, really hope that many of you will participate in this. There's so many ways that you can be a part of this by just simply sharing, streaming, telling your friends about it, using the hashtags. I know that was a lot of information that I just gave, but if you have any more questions, don't be shy. Feel free to put them in the comment section below. I have been wanting something like this for Janet for a while now, and I feel like she has impacted so many of us. And if we can get this album to #1, this would be a very special way to honor her and to celebrate the 20th anniversary of the underrated, wonderful Damita Jo album.